Okay, so we don't have a quorum, but we're gonna go ahead and get started just so we can get some things out on the table before we dive into it. And hopefully Mike and Alicia will join us. So I sent out the copy and everybody's got a copy in front of you. I know Alicia and Pete were able to test the electronic version. Did either of you?
I went in and did it. You know,
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and no problems. It skipped to the
I didn't
right.
have any problem with what I did on it, so.
Okay.
I can't say I tried to.
I tested it out too, but it's always better to have other people in there and make sure it skips correctly. So now the big question is, do we like the basic format of this? Not necessarily like the answer option responses, but the basic format of asking it this way.
Thought it was very easy, very simple, clear cut options to enter your own answers.
Was there another option that you debated in this format that?
What we had originally hoped to do, based on my notes from our last meeting, was that you got the list of all the categories, and it may have been more than 5 at the time that we were talking through, and you selected your top 3 or more, and then it would take you. And the functionality couldn't happen that way. So that's why there's a yes, no question at the beginning of each section.
But you can't get ranked choice voting out of.
It would not. I could not actually find a survey tool that would do ranked choice voting. You can do ranked choice voting, sure, but you can't then have the skip logic move you to multiple correct pages. So if you rank services 1 and space 2, it's going to skip you to services and it's not going to take you back to space. So we could ask the question of like, what is most important? But we're still going to have to ask something to get you to the right pages. Does that make sense, or is that just?
But wouldn't it come out how you feel, maybe not in a ranked order, but if how many people, say 25 people take this and 5 people skip youth programming. We can know then out of 25 people, 20 people at least think youth programming is worthwhile, is important in some way, and vice versa if they skipped adult. Yeah. So it might not give us a definite rank, but would it offer us some piece of the pie in that?
I think it will, and I agree with what you're saying. I also understand what Bill's saying is it's not going to give us like a definitive, like the collection, right? 50% of the people said collection was number 1. We'll know that collection is important to a lot of people, but we won't know like the exact, like how you would place it.
Is it worth asking the question either at the end or somewhere in the survey to just be like, of these areas, which one's most important? And just because we have, and I know we're not talking about the items, but within each section, we have what is your favorite, and people can click multiple things. So again, to your point, Michelle, the absence of clicks will tell us what people didn't value. But could we make it like you can only answer 1 and at some point be like, of these categories, which one's most important? Collections, adult program, children's.
So like just as a separate question at the end.
Separate discrete question. I don't know if that's redundant because again, if we're analyzing this data, we are going to get at just by volume what people thought was most important.
I found when I did it, I was clicking lots of things, and so I just wonder if lots of people just go through and say, it's all nice and whatever, we're just gonna get a big blob of maybe a few people didn't click everything, but most people did, and so what did that really tell us that people going in click everything? Then you're basically dependent upon the commentary that's there as your distinguishing factor, but that's all subjective areas.
So I don't know. We can add more in there. We can get people to rank things.
I think ranking would make it more complicated at this point because now we're kind of mixing the format. It's like, what's your favorite? What's your rank? We're asking them a couple different things. I think, Bill, I take your point that people might just click everything. But I think at that point, even if the ratios are different, if, like I'm on library services and it's like passport services, fix a cafe, use book sale. If those are 100%, every single person who took the survey said those were their favorite, and then reference assistance was 85%, it's still the lowest, you know, it's just that nothing got below an 85.
Or, and just, what have you used and then what are your favorite? And just say, instead of select all that applies, select 3, select 5.
Force people to limit their choices.
There is no way to actually force them to limit their choices in the system. We can make that as a note, but they'll still be able to select more if they want, or less if they want. So your choices on like how to set up the thing are checkboxes, which you can't put a limit on, or multiple choice, so it would just be one.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So this is a pre-copy of what I had sent out. And now we talked about like just kind of the basic format of having it in sections and asking these questions and make sure everybody seems to be in alignment on that. Are you okay with that? Or do you want, okay.
No, yeah.
And then what we're kind of to the point now is discussing whether or not we need some ranked choice or some limitations on some of these rather than select all that apply for everything. And as a point of clarification, the answers that we have in there, those are not exhaustive lists. We know we need to work on that. I just took the information from the original file that Michelle received. So, Bill, you want to clarify what you were talking about? Maybe Mike will have a perspective on it.
No, just in, these ones, what are your favorites? Like I said, just select, you say select all that apply, I would just say select 3. And even the functionality would allow you to check 5. I think most people, if given the opportunity, given the instruction to select 3, would always select 3. And if a few people go beyond that, then I just don't really think from a data management point of view, data interpretation point of view, maybe that far off. We're sort of limited by the functionality of the surveys that you can access. I don't know. I'm sure you can get more expensive surveys, but we're not set up to do that at this point in time in the way that we
No.
manage it. It was
The only survey tool that I could find that did everything we wanted is a survey tool called Qualtrics, and it is quite expensive. So, yeah.
So we sort of have to go with something that Jerry makes a little bit. It's not going to be perfect for a couple of reasons, but I just, like I said, as I did this, did I use it? Did I like it? It took sort of all this time.
mhm.
There's nothing I don't like. I like all this. I pay for it. Why wouldn't I like it?
So we can change these on the favorite piece to how do people feel about the select up to 3 or something like that, language like that. Up here comes the language. Hello, welcome. We're just talking a little bit about the format of this, and the suggestion that we might do is under the favorite for each one. Even though there's no way to limit it in the software, to put select the up to 3 or something like that, so they can't just.
Gotcha.
Are folks on board with that?
Mhm.
Okay. The other quick bits before we get into, that I have questions about for you all, before we get into like the meat of what's in these categories. I did have like the add any additional comments. I'm sure there are people that feel super passionately about one thing that we'll put in there. The demographics, I tried to capture the things that we had talked about last time, and ran those through my data analyst, who said that those were probably your key things to ask because they will not identify anybody and they don't get into anything like specific. The age ranges are kind of tight. I thought about grouping them together. Like this is just what SurveyMonkey recommended, but they can be grouped a little bit more.
No, I think those are fine.
Michelle, is that similar to how, because we ask age range on our surveys, right?
Yes.
that similar? Because I feel like
We
that's,
go up a little higher.
okay.
We do go up to, and it's the tens.
It is on the tens?
Yes.
I,
For adults, it is on the.
okay, so maybe we should do 65 to 74 and then 75 plus? Like, because we think we have senior users.
We do like 70 to 79, 80. I think we actually do 80. I don't know if we go to 80, but we do 20 to 29.
Okay,
We do them that way.
okay.
On the demographic, I find this how frequently, it's a little confusing how the virtual is separated out because
And I just had the most random note about that, which said only online. So I was trying to, I wrote digital usage. So,
I would be more inclined to say, you know, how frequently do you use the library either in person or online and group it all, you know, and
Okay.
let them, you know, they can tell us by their answers what things they like, you know, and just, this is a little confusing because if it's, okay, well, what if, you know,
we didn't say,
they use it virtually, how often do they use it virtually or?
how often did you come into the library
Yeah.
building is, so,
And based on our library usage, we know the percentage of our users who are virtual versus in person. So
Okay.
we can kind of extrapolate that.
And I feel like if somebody was like, well, you know, I use the library virtually all the time, but I only very rarely come into the library. Well, do I check rarely or do I check
Yeah.
virtual, which I actually use more? Or what, you know, it's like a little confusing. So I would just try and get a sense of how often they interact with the library in whatever way they do that.
so is the language, how frequently do you use the library either in person or online? Good, or do we need, should we,
I mean, that works for me. I don't know. Yeah.
okay. And then get rid of the I only use the library virtually
Yeah,
option.
I think that makes sense.
Okay. I put the uncertain on the library card because I think that there are people out there that don't know if they can answer yes or no. Okay.
That is true.
For the library collections questions, I found the options interesting.
You're going through the options just.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're messy. I
Okay.
just took this, so I know they're super.
Oh, no, I
messy.
was just like, huh, okay, those are the buckets.
I added the place for people to put their information. I know we haven't firmed up 100% that we want to have focus groups, but it's a way to capture people now. Yeah. And then I put the little note, so like we'll capture that. I'll pull that information out separately so we can see who's interested in being a part of a focus group, but that won't be a part that goes to the whole committee. So you won't try and mix them up. Any other format questions before we dive into what I know Alicia wants to dive into and what I'm going to say?
Format was.
Well, yeah, so I don't know if this goes to format or if it's more the content. I'm just trying to think like how the answers we get out of this connect into our
Mhm.
long range plan, you know, process. And I guess maybe this goes, you know, maybe we'll talk about this when we get into the content of, you know, what the, but it seems to me that I'm not sure how you go from favorites, you know, this is what your favorites to, you know, what are things that actually, you know, need to be part of a long range plan or the
Mhm.
priorities, you know, it's like, if we had a lot of people that check, you know, their favorite thing at the library is the fish tank. Well, that's, you know, nice to know. That's good information. But what does that tell us about like what we're going to do in the next 3 years? You know, it doesn't mean we build more fish tanks. You know,
Yeah.
it's,
Might be that we keep the fish tank.
well, yeah, but, you know, you know, it's good to know if there's something people really
Yeah.
like. That's helpful. But for long range, for saying, we're trying to identify priorities that we want to, you know, steer our energy toward over the next several years. How did these answers get us there? And that's not
Yeah.
totally clear to me.
I think that's a great question. Honestly, library space was the first thing I tackled and I was trying to fill out this list. And just thinking about things in the space that people might like. So I'm the one that added like, the fish tank, the fireplace, rotating art, like I added that. That was not in there. So I understand, your point. I think, for me, some of this is like, has to be extrapolated. Like if the things that we get are like, if like everybody says they love the fish tank and the fireplace and the artwork, like if those are the three things that get the most hits, I think what people are saying is they like a homey environment. Like they like something that is a little more exciting, but that also does require interpretation. So.
Because the other way to tackle that is, because we had talked, I feel like, about asking people conceptually what they liked. What do you value? Do you value the library being comfy and cozy? Do you value it being utilitarian? If we do that, then we run the risk of people being like, I don't know what this means. I don't know what comfy and
I
cozy.
think we were trying to avoid yes or no questions.
Yeah.
Because people would just probably say yes to everything for the
Right.
most part, but maybe it converting into like true false, like I feel like that the library is a homey and comfortable place. And then if people say false, then we go, ugh, like maybe there is something cozy we could do. And then that being like, if you said no, why, right? And then that being the definitive answer
But
that we then.
I wonder if like that stuff is what we would want to get out of, it could be something that goes in here. I hesitate to make the survey like super long,
Mhm.
but I wonder if that's the kind of thing that we can get out of doing focus groups where we're actually talking to people. We can get them to expand on their thoughts,
Mhm.
but maybe it is the kind of thing that needs to be in the survey.
sort of, I tend to agree with you, Corey, with your thought of if we ask them about fact, like actual things, and we see a trend, then we can turn that trend into the long range plan. The survey results were people liked the cow, so they like the library having an identity. There's like, I do think there is a little bit of interpretation there where we're putting our thoughts on what the survey is telling us, but I don't know that, the true false gets us there any better.
So instead of like adding to, like, why don't we swap out? So I feel like some of these got redundant where it's like, what parts have you visited and then what are your favorite things? I feel like you would just pick mostly the same things. The only time I picked anything different was when there was added stuff. So I was like, it doesn't say I visited the fish tank or the fireplace, but I do like those things, so I picked them. But I feel like when you just say, what do you use? And then what are your favorite? I would assume that the things that you're using are your favorite things. So maybe we swap out one of those questions for something that we can get more value out of the answer from and go, oh, okay, maybe it doesn't have to be the true or false example, but just, yeah. I don't know that one adds additional value to the other.
And for some of these, like which spaces have you used in the past year? And it depends on the examples we use. But some of these are statistical. We know the answer. So when we ask how many people visited the library, that's a number. We know the answer.
I don't
guess it
track the
helps.
spaces though.
Some of them we do. So like the study rooms, we know, but then some of these we don't know. We don't track how many people visit the teen room. So some of these we are good for a survey because we don't know the answer, but some of them we already know the answer.
Mhm.
And what's a table seating area? What's a lounge seating area?
Couldn't figure out how to say lounge seating, but what I mean is like this. Is that still out
And
there?
Yeah,
Do we have very many of those?
and then what's the difference between that and a quiet space?
I don't know. What
So
is there
yeah.
a quiet space?
It's all.
But people had put quiet space on there, so I was like trying to,
Well,
yeah.
so that's my other, like, I feel like if we're asking people what's your favorite things, that's steering them only toward what we currently have and offer.
Mhm.
And if somebody says, I wish there was a dedicated quiet place, we don't have a dedicated quiet place, there's not any place to say it's your favorite. Now, I know there's the box at the end, it's like, what would change? But I feel like the survey's kind of pointing you toward like, here's things we have and what do you like best? And that's what, I know there's that other, and maybe that's the best way to do it, but then we're just gonna we're not giving them options to try and see what people might like, where you'd get like, you could see if you're getting a lot of people choosing the same thing. Here, it'll just be one-off things that people put in that might not,
Mhm.
correspond, and so to get, same thing with like, the programming, right? So adult programming, we say, what's your favorite kind of, what's your favorite adult programming? And people can check the things they like. But what if somebody's thing is like, well, I wish they were offering this kind of thing. That's what I would really like, but I've never seen it offered or they don't do that. There's nothing, they got to write that in the space as their own, so.
So I mean, I get what you're saying and
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, I mean like, and
I don't envy you.
I don't know how to.
Because this was
I
a
know- I
hard
know.
start. This is start from saying.
That's okay. Oh, no, and that's,
Not
I,
ripping your stuff
No,
apart.
no.
trust
I
me.
don't, I don't have, I don't have a good
So
solution, you know,
the
because.
solution is to ask, I feel like, what's missing?
Yeah.
What is missing
Yeah.
from the library space? What is missing from the library?
Why don't we just
collection?
ask that? I mean,
And
we're-
that's what I'm saying. So,
Yeah.
and I think, like, and this is again leaning towards this, if you could change one thing, that's what I thought people would also say, but maybe there's need to be two separate questions.
Yes, asked very directly.
like, I like and I dislike, right? Or,
Yeah,
That
but the
goes-
change, I feel like, is a dislike, but like missing is different than change, you know?
yeah, right, yeah.
I mean, and that, I don't know, is that getting at the,
I don't, you know, I don't know if there's a good way to. I guess, I don't know. I don't have a good answer. It's, I feel like if there was some way, but this, you know, this is probably. There'd be a lot more work on our part, and I don't even know if we'd capture the right things necessarily, but you know, if it feels like if we could give people options, you know, that they could choose among, you know, to say which of these things are, you know, would you most like to see or whatever, and we had a whole bunch of suggestions or ideas for them to pick one or two or that they thought were, you know, most important or most, you know, then that might, you know, help us kind of narrow in, but I don't know if we'd be able to come up with the right options to really capture the kinds of things people, you know, and we'd be, again, we'd be steering them toward the things we've thought of that we put on the list and not the.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Just talk to yourself.
No, there's definitely, you know, there's a benefit to having an open, you know, just like an open, you know, open-ended question that people can say whatever they want, you know, what's missing or
Yeah.
what should change or, you know, however we want to phrase the
You could say like,
questions.
in 3 years, I'd like to see blank at the library.
But it's, you know, the benefit of that is, you know, if people have things that they really, you know, it's like, oh, I really wish that this was there. I really wish we had that, you know, then somebody has a space to put that in. But there might be a lot of people who either, they're less likely to answer these open-ended question
Yeah.
things. These get low response versus checking boxes,
people
whatever.
that feel passionate answer the open.
Yeah.
Texas.
Or we might get a couple one-off responses that, you know, from people that have a particular thing, but we don't know, is that something that would resonate with a lot of people? Or is that just one person's kind of thing? And, you know, had that been on the list, maybe a lot of people were, oh, yeah, that's a good point. I would like that, but because it's not presented to them or, you know, I don't have a good answer. I'm just.
No, this is,
I'm not sure. I just wanted to really think about like how whatever we get out of this is gonna,
funnel it.
yeah, like how does it get, ultimately, we gotta get a long range plan out of this.
Yeah.
You know, fairly, you know, focused, you know, things that we want to accomplish and how does this help us get there best? I don't know.
This is gonna sound like I'm just being like overly optimistic. We are going to see trends and patterns and we're gonna expand off that. Like that, I mean, that does sound very simple and optimistic, but I think it's the case. Like the questions that we ask specifically about like up to 3 of your favorite things, that's gonna give us our trends that we're gonna see. And we know we need to emphasize expanding them or continuing the service in that area. And then I think that the what is missing and what changes do you need are gonna give us some ideas to generate, to go back to the staff with and to go into into focus groups or however else we want to expand on them and see if they have traction or not. It's, like I said, I recognize that sounds like overly optimistic, but
I don't think so, because the joke that we use in our first 2 meetings was people come back and be like, I want a pony. We will go to the staff and say that people want a pony, and they're gonna say, well, we can't do that, but what can we do? You know, and they're gonna come up with some, like, we have had animals here for like petting zoo type activities. So it's like a cutesy example, but I kind of share your optimism that, yeah, this might not give us something definitive, but it will give the staff ideas, which we can then turn into a long-range plan.
Good word on that. I sort of lined up with Mike on this, is that I sort of wondered where the question could go in terms of this, but I don't have enough experience in surveys of this nature to say what people can do with the data that is as it is, but I just do think that making people pick some priorities in this would go a long way toward, because when I sat down and did it, and a lot of these things, I was clicking all the boxes on the first question.
You just love everything, Bill.
Well, it's a library, and so we have what we have here, and I'm just, I myself just can't think of what more things I want to put in the library, too. I just don't have the ideas for that, but I'm interested to see what other people will come up with. I'm always going to be surprised. So,
And I do think that's why this, what is missing, or in the next 3 years, I'd like to see the library add this, like, I think that will help us generate ideas that then we circle back on. The bulk of this is going to help us understand the resources, services, whatever it is that we're currently doing that are of value. And I don't think a strategic plan has to ignore those. It can emphasize the ones that are really important to people.
And we're not gonna
So-
capture everything all
No.
up front. In general, there's things that are gonna be more important this round, than the next time we go around, people will be like, well, they never did anything with that. Like, I need to make sure that they know that this is important to me, so then the next round, we pick those up. So, yeah, I think taking out some of these things that end up more or less repeating themselves, because this is the same thing here, with the library services. Which ones have you used? What are your favorite? I imagine you're using.
And all the questions are formatted in the same way. So,
Right,
yeah.
right. So I think if we cut that out, we can still add in these things that will give us clear answers without adding a ton more time, because we all who've done it said it was 5
5
minutes. So
yeah.
even if we go up to 10, that's still not a terrible,
Yeah, so is the idea we chop out the question about what have you used in the last year? Do we?
We can chop that out. So I'll tell you where the rationale came for putting that in. When I talked to my data analyst, she said, remind people what you do so they remember if you do it well. So that's why that question is asked, to try and get as comprehensive of a list as we can in these areas, or at least something that touches on all the stuff that we offer. So then they're reminded, oh, I have done 6 of these 8 things, or what have you. And then they go on to their favorite. And as they were checking those boxes, they're thinking about, I've used a study room, but it was not my favorite. Like that, like I didn't care, so they're not going to check that on the next round. But that's like a psychology behind it, not necessarily how everyone treats it.
That's interesting, because I was thinking like the data we're getting from that first part is not really going to be particularly useful to us. I mean, because I mean, at least to me, for looking at it,
Yeah.
saying if we're asking people, what types of programming do you like, are your favorites or whatever. I mean, most likely anybody that says this is their favorite, they already did that, and it's just going to tell us, oh, well, of the people who said that this was their favorite, then, almost all of them had used that, or I mean, like, is that helpful? That's not, it's like, but what you were saying, it's more of a priming thing where you're just kind of getting people to think about what they've actually done in the library before they go on and answer the question we actually care about. Maybe that makes sense, and I can see that. I don't.
So, and the checkbox questions are the questions that require, like, the survey, it takes the least amount of time, because you literally just read them and mark them as you read them. So if we don't think this is a value and we're getting to the exact same point in the favorites, they're going to be reminded of the stuff as we read it. I say we take it out in all of them. But if we want to do that prime the pump thing, then we can. So, and if we're going to duplicate the list exactly, then I think we could take it out.
I'm team, make it just the one question.
Sure.
Myself. And use that question space for something
Okay.
to give us additional value or insight. So we'll have to extrapolate the least. We can take some of the guesswork out of some of the answers we're gonna get.
I'd be okay with that. Yeah, just get rid of the which have you used, stick with the favorites, and then.
And then we add a second question about
Yeah,
like
I think we do
a
two.
third.
One question for what is the library not doing that
Mhm.
you wish they were, or what's missing, or whatever. That, yeah, and the one that we already have, which is what should change, which is a little different.
I mean, like I can imagine based on other other patron feedback on what should change about the library space are going to say, like, we know of a couple of things that are probably going to get said,
Yeah, we can do, because I had that thought to do the, like, what should we do more of, or what should we add? Those could be 2 questions that give different answers, because what should we do more of is something we already do. what should we add is something we don't do yet. And then they make suggestions for something new there.
Yeah. Do you think that what should we do more of is different than what are your favorite things?
Yeah, because I mean, passport services, I marked as my favorite, but how do you do more passport services?
I mean, more appointments, like more, I mean,
Possibly, but I think
Yeah.
that's now adding your own. Like, I mean, I wouldn't have an answer for you. I
Yeah.
just think it's cool we offer it. I've never used it. It's
okay.
my, I already renewed my passport, so I'm actually fine, but until I need to, but now I know that we have it here, I'm like, that it's my favorite knowing that it's here, because I think that's so cool. I haven't used it, so I would not have marked it off on things that I've used, but I did mark it as my favorite. But I don't even know what would change from it, because I haven't used it, so I couldn't even make a suggestion if I tried. So if you ask me what should we do more of, I probably won't say more passport services. I would probably say, and I know what I answered, because I answered it truthfully, as if I'm really taking it. I said, I'd really love programs for kids that were past working hours, or there was some overlap, because like, I could never get my kid to the Lego one. By the time I pick them up from aftercare, it's done. So like, that was my answer.
I guess my question would be, how many questions, of the open-ended questions, how many questions do we think is too many to put on there? You know, that, you know, we want to.
More than 2 per section.
I mean, I would swap this for one more open-ended and leave it at that. I would not want to add a ton more to this. I'm trying to think of swaps, so we can kind of keep it at the length it is. I would love to keep it at 5 minutes.
Because the open-ended questions, I mean, there's a couple different, you know, and they can overlap, or we can try and phrase them to kind of encompass more than one thing. There's a couple different ways you could ask the question and we get slightly different answers. One is the kind of what's missing, or what should the library do that it isn't currently doing, you know, something new. One is, what do you think the library should be doing more of, which might give you a little bit different, you know, answers to that. And what should change, you know, what should be different or what should change. That's another, you know, like there's overlap between them, you know, and some people's, you know, what should change would be you should do more of this or whatever. You could kind of lump some of them together and just phrase it a little differently or whatever, but they all give you a little bit different. But I don't know how many, you know, again, the more questions we add, the more kind of it's going to feel, you know, people look at it like, oh, that's a lot of, you know. So it's how many questions?
I know, I
should
get
be
what you're
questions.
saying. I have a slightly different view on it, but I think it's just because favorite gets at a value statement. So it's saying like, what do you value? And so I think that is actually more important to us than what we should do more of. But if other people are feeling like do more of is gonna get us better results.
Historically, whenever I've asked in library land, what should you do more of? People always just say more books. That's like the common answer. I just don't know what to do more of if it's going to be helpful.
Well, if we just put that question in the programming section, it doesn't have to be in every single one,
Yeah.
but whatever would be helpful for, even from the staff's point of view, because I could just make a guess what would be helpful for y'all, but if that would be a helpful question.
I think on the programming, it's an appropriate place for
Yeah.
the more of.
I just don't always assume that just because something's someone's favorite, they would want more of it.
With that, like, when you do that, if you could change one thing and looking at it, because I did it like, as I work here, I did it as someone just like looking at it, that's why I'm looking at it going, using table seating areas, lounge seating areas, and a quiet space, as the patron, that's the whole place. But if I thought about it as my favorite, then I'm going to think, this was my favorite place, or having a table was my favorite place, or sitting by the fireplace is my
Yeah.
favorite place. So it has a different connotation when you look at it as my favorite place or as a place I used, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because when people are like, well, where can I go if I can't get a study room? Well, you can sit all along in different places, and they pull up chairs, we have little tables. And then in the question, if you could change one thing, the community artwork and then more lounge seating, that made my brain go, right, wouldn't it be great to have a few more places for chairs where I could read?
And that's sort
Or-
of where I thought people would say like more
But almost
story times or
needs-
more kids programs during off. Like
the
that's what yeah.
Question?
It, like, I think though, at least here, looking at it just here, not going anywhere else, that led me to go, right, having more comfy chairs to read would be great, or having more table space, because that is something when we look around, when our rooms are booked, where do they?
Yeah.
They,
Yeah.
My thought is like if we're taking out these redundant questions, that whenever we put in would hopefully be like something that would elicit like a thought on something. Because I feel like this will be good data to know what people's favorites are, but I would feel less confident extrapolating stuff from it. Cause just to work with the examples given, I like that my kid comes here and uses study room for her tutor, and I might mark it as a favorite thing because it's a lifesaver, because my house is chaotic since she can't sit with a tutor in my house. But I wouldn't be like, just because I mark it off, I wouldn't want someone to assume that meant I want more study rooms or I would probably answer that more time slots, but.
And
because there's
that's why I
something
say
there.
like favorites is a value, not an ad. Like that's like that.
Right.
What it triggers. Right. So just to circle back to you, are you advocating for having the duplicate lists in there? Or you're just saying it triggered something different in your mind?
I think it triggered something different in mine. I think that the duplicate doesn't work for me.
Okay.
And I think I thought about things differently as a favorite, because thinking too, as a patron, used a large meeting room or community room, do they even know what's the difference?
And yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know what was the difference.
As you told me, could I attend a program? And like, I didn't book a program. I like,
Yeah.
so that kind of, but does somebody in the community, do they, the HOAs, other things, use the large room, or the knitters use community room?
Yeah,
So
I guess we'll
but
also find out as this gets answered if we need to change anything the next time around, so I'm not too.
I also thought about combining the program community rooms because I think most patrons, I don't still fully understand. I mean, I understand the booking is different, but I don't understand the difference.
Program / community room,
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, 'cause I
big
think they're
difference.
interchangeable to most people, because they're multifunction.
Is the teen room called the teen room?
Yeah.
Did I make that up?
Foundry, but yeah.
Oh, is it?
Okay,
I mean,
that can go in
But yeah,
Yeah,
but
but we
in quotes, or that can go in parentheses behind it.
See, if you said the Foundry to me, I'd be like, I don't know what that is. But I know teen room.
Does the children's room have a name?
I don't think so.
Just the
No.
offshoot of the children's room.
The children's programming room.
And
Oh,
And
I
then the
meant
meadow.
meadow.
Oh, the meadow, yes. The meadow.
I mean, I think they should remain on the same checkbox, but
So the one thing I noticed that was missing from this that I think we do want to drive at is what we want to do with the Norman skill room. Should we have a specific question for that?
I believe no, but advocate for it if you want.
It doesn't have to specifically mention that room, but we can maybe have a question that said, if we had an extra programming room, what would you like to see there? Or if we had just an extra space, what would
I
you want
I
to
would
see
say
there?
if we just said if we had an extra space.
Space.
Yeah.
What would you like to see there? And that would,
I mean, we do have a space that we're,
but I think we're trying to
I.
not mention cafe and we're not, if you said the name of the room, no one would know what that is, but I
Yeah,
think,
but well, what are we, I mean, I don't know.
what's the like number one thing we're trying to figure out what to do with? So I figure like
Yeah.
leaving it off does us a disservice because we'll still maybe be scratching our heads at the end of this going, well, what do we do with that space? We were waiting for the long range plan to figure that out. That I think that's not too leading of a question. I think it's still vague enough. It's not promising that we have an extra space that we're doing anything with because they don't know that we're referring to this room. But if we see like 50 people write cafe, then I think the writing might be on the wall with that, but maybe everybody says the Fix It Cafe or the blah, blah, blah. I don't know.
Well, that's,
We'll
I
at least
mean,
get an answer.
I still feel like if I was to look at this, I would put it back in, if you would change one thing or what is missing, I would drop it into one of those slots.
See, and I didn't, and I know that that's something we need to do, and none of the questions made me think of that.
Okay.
And I should know more than anybody.
I don't know, I think we have that space, it's gonna be used for something, but there's a lot of different ideas and disagreement or thoughts about what it should be used for, or what's gonna be done with it. I mean, if we wanna find out what people think about it, maybe we should just ask and not try and be beat on the bush. or
But that
whatever.
is asking, it's just saying if we had a space, what would you want to see?
Yeah, but why not ask about,
The space, the cafe was in,
Yeah.
so I
think you're gonna get too many loaded answers on. if you
I
say
think it's a
cafe.
focus group question.
It is focus group question.
But if we want to just straight up ask it in the survey,
No,
You know, before the renovation, the Norman's Cove room was there in pretty much its current configuration. All we did during the renovation was put some cafe equipment in there. But if that's out of there, it is a conference room, a mid-sized meeting space like this one, like the other one and that one. And I don't think people are distinguishing in this as the, what's that one over there?
Westbrook.
Westbrook room, or they don't know the names of them. They don't care about it. It's a third mid-sized space.
So here's my question, what would it hurt to put the question in there? Like, we can question it, what would it hurt to put it in? Worst case, we get some answers and they give us nothing to go on and then we clarify it in the focus group. But I think going into the focus group without any direction whatsoever, we're gonna end up leading people maybe unintentionally. So what I'm trying to remove is some of the bias here, because we know what we have said we feel is important or some ideas. But I feel like this would capture some, because we don't know who's gonna end up in the focus groups at the end of the day. So I'd rather have more data to pull from to then maybe try to craft that into thoughtful questions to those focus groups than just miss it completely. And I don't see what the downside to asking is if we keep it broad enough.
I think for me, the downside is that it overwhelms the rest of the long-range plan, is now it becomes a long-range plan about what to do about the cafe space. And I think that people who feel passionately about the cafe are going to see it that way. If people want to put in every one of these things, what would I do differently? I'd bring the cafe back. I would rather have that answer than encourage people to.
Say, I want the cafe back in the Norman's Cove room.
so
I almost want to have a separate conversation about the cafe. Like, I almost want to, like, if we could put a disclaimer in here, like, we will talk about the cafe later. That's what I would want to do.
I'm gonna throw out one thing. This is why there's the 4 examples all over this. Would it have triggered you to put your comment there if under, I'm just gonna use change because it's already set out. If you could change one thing about the library space, what would it be? Example, community artwork, more lounge seating, something cafe, former cafe space.
I think you're gonna get a lot more cafe answers than if you just left it open. I think it'll.
Well, I mean, but I'm saying like, but I mean, however we want to say it, to solicit people that are thinking, that want to comment about that somewhere and that are going to find a space to comment about it.
I mean, it's not a hill I'll die on. I thought that would help kind of give us more insight in that area, because it does seem to be the one that seems to have the least amount of like, what do people actually want? Because they were led into answering that the last time they were asked about stuff. So I know we were trying to avoid that. And I feel if we put the word cafe on here, that will drive
Yeah.
more people to say, I want a cafe.
So-
Yeah,
I'm
mean-
just trying to,
now that you mention it.
yeah, now that it's on here and I
I mean,
see it,
we could
yeah,
also
let's
do
talk
like additional community room or something like that, which is gonna get us to the space component without putting the
I
cafe.
don't really know if people will make that, if we had an additional community, we could do more programs. Well, what more programs would you do?
I think people are gonna comment all over the survey about the cafe in random places. I really do. I mean, the people that care about it and are asking questions and keep emailing and keep asking, they'll just put it in
How
there
many
wherever they.
are you getting? I mean, how many of you say keep it? How many are you really getting?
Oh, me personally?
No.
I mean, the one that I responded to, but I mean, I hear people ask about the cafe all the time. At the book sale, when I was volunteering, I think 3 or 4 people asked me about it. And I was just there with a volunteer name tag on. But like twice we were in that room. So they're like, what are you guys gonna do with this room?
Hundreds of people.
Yeah, but I
Three
mean,
or four people ask about the cafe.
people that are outspoken are gonna.
Yeah, I just don't, I just need to put that into the pool of,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, yeah, there are some people who got that on their mind, but at the end, it's a small population, and just because we get a random, you can't extrapolate that to.
Yeah.
Everybody that's in here really is a cafe person, okay, 3, 4 people asked about it, and you maybe got how many emails on the cafe? Of course, those people are gonna be out there, but, I just don't feel them breathing, I don't wanna take them breathing down my back or the trustees' back and say, we need, because 2 people asked about it, it's back on the burner again,
Mhm.
so.
Oh, and those people weren't even necessarily saying, are you bringing a cafe back? They were like, what are you gonna do with the cafe space?
Yeah, right.
Like, that's the kind of question. that
Right,
I
yes,
asked.
yeah.
I mean, the one email, yes, was like, are you bringing a cafe back? But I don't necessarily think that was, you volunteered. Did anybody ask you about it?
No, I was in the other room though.
Okay.
Yeah, we get.
People mostly ask me about when's the last time you did one of these? Are you doing more and how
Yeah.
often?
We get periodic questions, but to Bill's point, we can't take that anecdote to be like, there's a groundswell. The way I'm kind of looking at this, and again, I don't want it to derail the whole conversation, is the cafe might be out of our hands. Even if we as a group were like, this is what we want to do, if we don't get another vendor, we need to be like, okay, what else are we doing with that space?
Yeah,
Like,
that's why I was thinking of it as an idea generate. I think maybe using the cafe as the example was bad because that's so triggering. I just meant people could say that they want an additional fish tank in an extra room for all I know, but I just thought that that would be an
Mhm.
interesting open-ended question that would be more than just what
I
would
just don't.
change.
I said, I don't know if people carry around a count in their head. We consider these medium sized. We have one really large
Yeah,
size.
I
We
mean-
have, 7 small size conference rooms. I don't think people are caring. This is where the programs happen and this is where stuff happens. So if the question is what stuff do you want? And then
Mhm.
what rooms are we as administrators gonna, and trustees, what rooms are we gonna put it in?
Yeah. So, and I'm just, this is one piece about like survey design as a whole that I've learned, is if we want to be able to equally weigh these areas, collections, service, like all of that stuff, we have to ask the same amount of questions in each of them. So if we want to add an extra question, that's fine, but I think we have to select an extra question to ask in each category. Because otherwise, if we have 5 questions in one category, it's going to give additional weight to that category. Amanda already warned me that additional weight is going to be given to the first things that are options for people to go through because you'll have drop-offs. So, but we'll just have to be aware of that. Like the things that are going to have the least responses are probably going to be youth programming. So if we want to adjust the order of anything, but it's gonna, however we put them in the survey is gonna have an impact on the results that we get. So that was her recommendation. So again, I don't think it's bad to have individualized questions in each section. We just want to make sure if we're putting one in, there is one in each section. So we don't have a solution on this cafe issue. Are we not putting it in? Are we putting it in as an example? Like,
Well, I guess my question is what's the relationship between figuring out what to do with that room and our long-term plan, long-range planning, that's something we've been talking about is, we have to figure out what to do with that space, what's going to be done with that space or, how's it going to be repurposed or what's it going to be done with? And is that, and I think the question, the answer to that question may depend on what that space ends up being used for. And it might be something that has to kind of really go in the long range plan, or it might not, depending on what that is. But when is that decision to be made and how is that going to interact with the rest of the long range planning? And I think that I'm not clear on that. And,
I think it goes, I don't think we're really talking necessarily about spaces. We're talking about things that we do in spaces.
Mhm.
And, the points that Peter brought up about making it, putting some more sophisticated audio visual stuff in a room, not necessarily any room, could be this room, could be the Westbrook. Audio visual stuff, could we do more programming with higher tech computer and audio visual resources?
And I imagine that part of that is going to come out like when we see, so these examples aren't in there now, but if like crafting classes, Fix-It Cafe, like if those kind of things get a ton of hits, then we know we need a space that has the technological capability to do that. If like literally everybody and their dog says, I just want more book clubs, then maybe that should just be another meeting. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff.
That was kind of my expectation too, is
All right,
the answers that we
well,
got.
that's a fair answer. That makes sense to me, I guess.
Because they don't know the names.
No, definitely not.
It's where the cafe was. It's the big room.
Yeah.
It's, where's Tawasentha? What is Tawasentha? It's the room.
If there's a
Where is Westbrook? I don't know where Westbrook is.
groundswell of people asking for more study rooms, then maybe it's broken into 4 study rooms. Like, I mean, that's not on our intention, but like, at least that would be following what we hear from the community.
We, at that point, we could say like, well, the people have spoken and we have an answer.
Yeah.
We have a solution. Like, we can give them this.
like I said before, we don't have much time left, 6:25. I'm okay with staying for an extra 10 minutes-ish, but I don't want to put that on everyone else. We know that these areas aren't fleshed out. I have a feeling that our lovely staff participant may have some ideas, but then, and then I'll mention one thing that Pete said.
Or are we just looking at this?
Oh, I'm like, I was talking sort of broad range, but
So did we reach, like, do we have a consensus on what we want the open-ended question or questions to be for these?
are we gonna leave the change in there? Like if you could change one thing about, what would it be?
I felt like our consensus was that we were going to keep the change.
And
We were going
then-
to add what is
So-
missing.
What is missing? Well, I have the two options here. What is missing from the library space, or in the next 3 years, I'd like to see this added to the library space, or let Alicia wordsmith that because it came from her. So,
And it was 3 years because that's the length of the plan.
Yeah,
so
I just like the number 3.
It's magic.
But we're gonna, are we taking out question 2?
we're taking out the first of the checkbox questions on each section.
Yeah, so I would just say fill in whatever that section is, so. I would like to see, in the next 3 years, I'd like to see blank in library collections and in adult programming or whatever, because they're only gonna answer the things that are
Yeah.
important to them anyway, so they might not be doing all of these sections. So that's what I would.
Okay, so I feel like, and I don't really know the answer to this. So the question is like, it's how we're framing it in people's minds. So Alicia's question, like in the next 3 years is like adding.
Yeah.
So that makes you think of it one way, like what extra service. The way Mike phrased it, what is missing, makes you think of like, what are we lacking? So they're the same thing, but they're asking it a different way. What's going to solicit the best responses?
Well, here's another question too. And I'm not sure what's the right way to go on this. Would we, suppose we're asking, what's missing or whatever, right?
Mhm.
You could ask, what is missing from the library? Or, say it's, what is missing in our, adult programming or whatever, something like that. You could ask it like that. Or you could say, is there something missing that you would like to see? Frame it
Yes,
that
no,
way.
add a comment field.
Well, you don't even just leave the box there. Just, is there something missing? If so, what? We'll put a box there. And then rather than just saying what is missing, that kind of makes people who feel like they have to answer every question. It's like, well, I have to come up with something. They're asking me what's missing. But if you say, is there something missing? If so, whatever, then people are like, oh, no, I'm happy with what's here. They can just skip it. And, I don't know if it makes, I'm not sure if I'm overthinking this.
No, I don't think you are. Because the first way we framed it, like what is missing makes it sound punitive. You're doing something wrong. There's a shortcoming.
Yeah.
Is something missing sounds positive.
I think, what is missing implies that there is something missing,
Mhm.
and then you have to guess what it is.
And so if we want to spin it in the other directions, you're thinking positively, it's less about using the word missing and more about using the word what should we add. So I don't know. But I mean, it can also be a yes or no question with the follow-up. So we're essentially asking, are we asking about missing? Are we asking about adding? They could be the same thing, a yes or no. Should we add something to the library space? Are we missing something in the library space? Yes, no, and then a box if you say yes.
I would just, I'd be inclined to just ask the question, right? Say whatever the question is going to be, is there something missing from the library space? If so, what? And then give a space, but don't I wouldn't break it, because what happens if somebody says, is there something missing in the library space? Yes or no? Yes. And then they leave it blank. That's not helpful to us at all. We don't care about, we just care about if they tell us what it is, that's what we want. So we don't, and verse, okay, they can check no, but if they leave it blank, well, that's just as good.
Yeah.
They didn't give us anything. There's nothing to go on there. So I would just, to keep it less questions to answer and simpler, just say, is there something, question mark, if so, what? And then a space for them to put in whatever.
Okay.
That's my inclination, just to keep it less questions.
And are we doing in 3 years as well, or just
Well,
is there
okay.
something missing? 'cause in 3 years makes you think future. Like,
Mhm.
I want, what would I like to see? That puts it, what would I like to
It's
see
more,
in my life?
it's aspirational, which is, I think,
Yeah.
what long-range planning
Yeah.
strives at.
We're voting on missing or add. If you vote to ask the question framed as missing, or if you vote to ask the question, so we'll take it just.
So I think if we're gonna frame it with like the next 3 years, that frame, then I think that works better with adding instead of missing. You know, because then you're more, is there something new you would like to see in the next 3 years? Something like that is, you know, what, some,
Mhm.
you know, some sort of frame like that. Missing doesn't kind of work with that time frame, like the 3 years. Is there something missing?
Missing
there?
It gets to the, it's getting us to the same place where if you want to add it, it's something that is missing.
Yeah, so
I feel like change, you're gonna capture the short-term goals, like more
Mhm.
story times. Like, no one's gonna say in 3 years, I wanna see more story times. That might be a bigger ask. Like, in 3 years, I'd like to see, you know, more teen events.
Or
and
a
spaces.
senior room, you know,
I got a
teens are,
senior.
you know, I mean, like, you might get something like that. That's random.
I
don't
think that'll
that's
give the
missing.
bigger
Although
picture
we are
things
being
that we
recorded,
always.
so maybe somebody's.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But I
So-
think it's good to get the like more,
Okay,
you know, granular things, which I think change is what's gonna make me think of something immediate.
yeah.
And then the big picture stuff, I think that.
And we
that
can
helps
also
balance that.
add a slight tweak to the change question, which is if you could change one thing about the library space right now, what would it be?
Yeah.
And then in the
3
next
years.
3 years,
Yeah.
I'd like to see this added to the library space. I'll figure out how do we feel about that?
I like-
Really good.
Okay, no need for a vote.
Cool.
I can't read the time.
6:32.
Can we stay for 8 more minutes and let Michelle share some of her,
Yeah.
because I know you've got it for us.
Under library services.
Well, you can hit any of these sections.
So we have not had a Fix-It Cafe in the past year.
Oh, okay,
I think that was something people wanted to see,
okay.
but we have not had that. And I would change that maybe to computers or printers.
Oh, I was gonna say,
Okay.
I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah,
Okay,
We did not have
I
that.
think, you know, I can bring
so this would be like computers or
things.
I would put computers or printers because
Yeah.
I bet that is
Like
probably
text-
one of the using our computers to like do things or
Yeah,
coming to
or
print.
coming to print, 'cause you don't have a printer.
They come to print or
Yeah.
make photocopies. That is
Okay.
the busiest besides,
And they call that
Sorry.
Fix It Cafe?
no,
No.
we
We're
have
not
not had a
gonna
Fix-It
Cafe.
Cafe.
Oh,
That was
never
just like
happened.
aspirational.
Oh,
thing, so-
I was
That
like,
was an
that's what I
aspiration.
was stuck on, is I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, no, we didn't have one of those. I think it would be great to have one.
I
Those
think
are
it
really.
came on there as like a recommendation and
Yeah,
I didn't
but
parse that when I.
I
put
made
it
a
together.
few notes about that,
So
like,
what is it? I still don't know.
you like bring your,
You bring your iPad
It's
that's
like
not
text.
working.
Oh, it's,
Yeah.
that's
or
what I
your
said,
radio
like,
doesn't work.
Oh,
They,
okay.
you know,
It's like the Genius thing or the.
Oh,
Yeah.
swap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
different libraries do different things. Some do
Oh.
like musical instrument repair.
Yeah,
and-
see,
And I, because I've just had small kids recently, I thought like Tinkertown type stuff where you like give kids like a nail and hammers and a plank of wood and they just like bang stuff together, fixed it. Like that's what I
Yeah.
thought it was. And I was like, I didn't know we did that.
No, but
Okay.
that's great. I didn't even think of that as a service, but that's,
yeah.
And
And
honestly-
computers and printers, I think that's.
okay.
Because I was thinking about that in the space too. Have you used our computer? I'm like, that's actually a service, but
Yeah.
they are very.
Yep.
In collections, there wasn't really, nothing flagged me. I thought it was,
Okay,
but in adult programming, we have vague and then we have speed friending.
Yeah.
Speed friending is
listen,
one, but
it was in the top of my brain.
I know. But see, they can put that in like, what are your favorites? They will put in speed friending, but our crafts, we could use crafts instead of that. We have take and makes every month. Every single month we have take and makes, whether it's
Huh?
D&D or,
Mhm.
we had a quilling class. I don't do the crafts,
That's all right.
but this month is gonna be gardening. It's a take and make herb kit.
Yeah,
So our crafting, our take and makes, I think that would be better than calling out one program.
like
That happened.
literally, I was just doing that to put it in there as like, oh God. hey.
What
Or
category would,
it's like yoga is popular,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff is.
so for like speed friending, what kind of programming, would that fall under like a social program?
That's
So
like a
social
social-
programming
yeah.
versus like health programming, like yoga
Yes.
or whatever,
So,
Okay.
health, social.
and then you can say what kind of, because that is a question on our surveys too, is what would you like to see? What would you be excited to come
Yeah.
back for?
Okay.
And you're gonna, when we add those questions there, you're gonna see a lot of stuff.
I put seed library.
It didn't actually record anything, you guys, but I'm sorry, I thought I sent
Oh,
that in the email.
Oh,
I'm just saying.
I was just throwing that.
Oh, okay, that was.
That'd be my aspirational thing, 'cause I think it's so cool. I don't garden or do any of that stuff. I just think it's a cool.
I enjoy it.
I know one library does a little plant exchange and I know it's a lot, but I'm like, oh, it's so
I
cute.
think we're doing one, actually.
Yes, May 12th?
Yes,
Yes,
it's
something
soon.
like that, yeah.
Okay,
Yes. And the practical, under youth, practical skills courses for teens, I think that was an aspirational, again. But we have tacos, we have a teen advisory council. So that, and we have juniors and, so we have like the middle and.
Yeah, the Taco Junior and the Taco.
So that is something to
Okay,
put in there if you needed something else.
no, so,
And I don't think we have a teen book club. We have a graphic novel club, but we do not have a teen book club.
okay.
Really,
I believe you're correct.
we don't. I think again, that was aspirational. We have a graphic novel book
Okay,
club, but it is again the middle grades, not
Okay.
the teens.
what, do we? And again, this is me not knowing the specific language of this library. Where do middle grades fall? No, I know,
No,
but.
I mean, like literally the in
Middle
between.
grade books are in the kid children's.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's technically
Yeah.
children.
It's technically children,
Okay.
but some of them, but like, when I say in between, I mean, they literally float in between. It
Okay.
depends on what they want to
Yeah,
read and
The
what
teen
they're reading.
teen section is the YA, like
Yeah.
stuff in there, but middle grade is over in the
Okay.
kids.
Yes.
See, this is,
So they-
as somebody
they
who doesn't
kind
have kids, I don't know where all this stuff, so.
That's, I went to Michelle Dukes. I don't know.
And it depends. It depends. You'll see a sixth grader maybe heading into the foundry because they're looking for this sci-fi book or whatever. and
Yeah.
then-
So, okay, did you have other things to add on that one?
Nope. no.
Okay, so I have a suggestion. I got here a few minutes early and was talking to Pete about this. What I would love to do is clean up a couple of things we talked about, change out those, the questions and give just the PDF, like what you have here, to Pete, to Michelle, and to Christina. Have them take it to their colleagues, see what's missing. Have Pete take it to the department heads meeting, have Michelle talk to, and Christina talk to their colleagues and just say, hey, I'm on this. We want to make sure we're getting this right. Are you comfortable with that? Is that
Absolutely.
okay? And then they're gonna send back the feedback in the next week or two. So we can plug it in. We already know we're okay with the format. We've discussed the questions. We're gonna change out. We're gonna take the first one in each section out. We're gonna add in we're gonna make the note on the change. We're gonna add in the next 3 years we'd like to see. And then we're really gonna let the staff fill in the bits and pieces that are missing.
Mhm.
So you guys we're gonna rely on you to tell us what, we don't actually do this, don't put it in there. Or like, here's all the other stuff that we offer.
And do we have a target for the number of options? Because if we give this to staff, there's the chance that they're gonna put everything that we do in there, which is great, but it might be overwhelming.
Encourage them to use consolidation if necessary. Like, do we need to do like activity book clubs as opposed to regular just read or I mean like activity story times as opposed to regular just read like encourage them to lump things.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer on specifically how many is too many.
I think it's more just about like, what would be helpful when people are checking these, what would kind of
Mhm.
allow us to look at this survey and really see what people are liking, that, like, we don't, if it's too much specificity, that's like,
If we're asking them to select 3 or less, then we probably want to let them select up to 20% of the answers, which would mean like a maximum number that we would want on there is 15.
well, that's a lot. I mean,
And that is a lot, but I'm saying like,
You know, the biggest list we have right now, I think, is the spaces, right? And that's only got, let's see, looks like
well, and
11 or 12 or something like that.
it hasn't been crossed out, but we can cross out. You know, I mean, I want the feedback and please know some of this is me.
I think anywhere from like, 6 6 to 10 or 12 would probably be like a reasonable range, but you know.
Yeah. Let's maybe shoot for 12 at the most that comes. I don't think there's attachment to much of this. Like some of the stuff came from here that we would want to keep because we already know people had mentioned it before. But otherwise, like chunk that I added in, it can come out. So is this realistic? I can do this tomorrow, just make the edits. I'll send it back around to everybody so that it'll include you three that are on the staff. I mean, if anybody on the committee has suggestions too, but let's get real. We don't know like all the little bits and pieces of what's happening here. And then we'll set like a date 2 weeks out to have the responses back from, so we can plug those in. We'll take another quick look and then it will go to the committee. Okay,
6:41.
11 minutes over. That's all right. Thank you guys very, very much. Do you think that Christina might appreciate having a paper copy?
Yes.
Okay, well, and I'm gonna send a revised one, but just so she has it for now.
Well, and then she'll have context when we're talking about what we changed.
Yeah,
She'll be able to see the
perfect.
changes. Yep.
Because I'm just gonna edit in the same survey, so if you go back in there to retake it, you'll see the edits that I made. Thanks, everyone.